Okay, this is an article we're going to look at from Gaia, and you see it starts off with the butterflies. It shows a metamorphosis, and what we're looking at is 8 signs of Kundalini awakening, and we're going to start reading the article immediately. Lately, there has been a buzz around the world. Lately, there has been a buzz around the word Kundalini and what it means to have a Kundalini awakening. Is it dangerous? How do I know what I'm experiencing is Kundalini or something else entirely? What do I do if my Kundalini energy is waking up? Having owned a Kundalini yoga studio and being a psychotherapist, I get a lot of phone calls and questions around these topics. Okay, I want to stop reading the article right there and interject for a second. The thing about Kundalini energy is activated through meditation, and you're always meditating. Meditation relies on breath, breathing, and Kundalini is activated through prana energy, chi energy, ki energy, the etheric body. So from birth till death, you're always meditating. And when you have like a peak experience, so to speak, I think the Kundalini can be elaborated as a peak experience. And when you have that experience, the side effects of it can make you feel like you're out of touch with yourself. The side effects of it can make you feel like you're going crazy. The side effects of it can make you feel very euphoric and to be the happiest time in your life. And Kundalini energy, at least in the Western world, going to a doctor, they're not going to explain to you, oh, you're having a peak experience, Kundalini awakening. They're going to tell you there's something wrong with you and try to give you a drug. So a Kundalini awakening, it's a physiological experience, but it's also a very spiritual experience. And that's why Chinese medicine is very appropriate for looking at this sort of thing. Okay, lots of symptoms get blamed on Kundalini, from muscle spasms to seeing colors vividly to not being able to sleep. In my view, it's not the Kundalini energy itself that is causing problematic symptoms, but the physical, energetic, and mental blockages that are not allowing the energy to flow. Kundalini energy is just the basic force of life, the energy of awareness that exists in all of us. When we experience Kundalini symptoms, that energy is knocking on the door to get our attention and awareness so that we can make positive changes. When that happens, we can become who we are meant to be and wake up to our destiny. Okay, so I want to go back at that, and when they say energetic and mental blockages, take note that mental intelligence is just one form of intelligence. You also have emotional intelligence, and primarily the average individual who's going through a Kundalini awakening, they've been taught from children. The average person has been instructed from a child to zoom, like to have tunnel vision for mental intelligence only. Very few people are taught about emotional intelligence and spiritual intelligence. So, as you can see, let's go back to where it was saying. In my view, it's not the Kundalini energy itself that is causing problematic symptoms, but the physical, energetic, and mental blockages that are not allowing energy to flow. So there you go. Basically, what's being written is the mental process that the individual is going through is not allowing them to absorb and comprehend the experience fully. And so looking up emotional intelligence, empathic intelligence, it's more of a spiritual type of thing. And you have the ego mind, and then you have the higher mind. And the ego mind cannot comprehend a true spiritual experience. The ego mind is limited to earthly things. The ego mind comprehends basic stuff like going to work, getting a check, getting your driver's license, going to college, getting a degree. The ego, that's what the ego mind does. And most people stress the ego mind to try to make the ego mind work for all aspects of life, when in fact you have a much higher mind that can see everything that needs to be seen and is doing the work for you. You just have to sit back and let it happen and follow the higher mind. And that's what this article is talking about right here. So the ego mind and mental functions prevent people from truly absorbing what this Kundalini energy is really about, and it becomes a frightening thing. It's almost like a psychedelic experience. Like if you sit there, you saw people who, or you've heard stories about people who took an LSD or psychedelic mushrooms. If they sit there and they worry about it, they're going to have a bad trip, right? So if they sit back and relax, and somebody, as people who smoke marijuana, they sit back and they relax and they just go with it. They just go with it. That's kind of what Kundalini energy is like. You just sit back, relax, and you go with it. You just flow. Okay, we're going to be moving on. The soul has taken a body, and the soul has taken a body and come here for a reason. And if you are not living out that purpose, Kundalini can show up as disruptive so you can change course. It's a reminder so that we don't sleepwalk through life. Okay, that's interesting right there. That's sort of like people who aren't making changes in their life and aren't preparing themselves for the path that they need to take. Something disruptive will happen to grab their attention. Like, wake up, So if you're not gonna go after these things, go after a higher spiritual awakening on your own, something disruptive may happen in your life to force you to go after it. You'll be pushed into it, and it may keep happening over and over and over again until you take hold of it, until you pay attention. 8 signs of a Kundalini awakening. My own awakening started in 2008, grew in intensity through 2012, and has been continuing on, if a bit more gently, ever since. I've witnessed a similar process in many others. Below are 8 signs of a Kundalini awakening. Number 1, things are falling apart. You have a nervous breakdown, or your old life isn't working. And take heed to these questions. Take heed to these things. Like things are falling apart. You have a nervous breakdown, or your old life isn't working. In the West, people don't interpret life from a Taoist perspective as a flowing, a continuing, moving process. Have you ever heard Bruce Lee talk about life? He talks about it as water. Water can flow and water can crash, and you just go with it. When you're talking about Kundalini energy, you're talking about your experience of life. It's going to be very, very helpful for you to look to what the people in the Far East are talking about. The Zen masters and the Taoists, they're going to have a much greater handle on how to deal with something like this. I'm going to continue on. In 2008, it became clear that I needed to let go of a dependency on alcohol. This was not at all easy, but I see it as the early stages of my system clearing out old habits that would not serve me in my life, and not allow my Kundalini to awaken. After getting sober, my life, as I knew it, really started to fall apart. My job was so stressful that I had insomnia due to anxiety. My marriage was disintegrating, and I was contemplating how I might escape the whole disaster. The structures that I had put in place to prop up my unhealed self were no longer functioning, and I was becoming aware that the whole thing was a lie. This part of the process can look similar to a midlife crisis or a Saturn return in your astrological chart, where everything that you had committed to previously begins to dissolve or be taken away. Okay, so that's another very interesting part of a Kundalini awakening. I think a lot of people who have Kundalini awakenings are people who are looking for deeper answers in life anyway to begin with, people who are empathic, people who are deeply spiritual. And usually people who are very empathic and deeply spiritual, they end up becoming dysfunctional because they're taking on the energy of everybody around them. A truly sociopathic person is going to go through life very easily because they're not emotionally attached to the environment. They're not emotionally attached to their friends and their family. And so it's easier for them to cope with that. Somebody who's extremely empathetic and spiritual, they're going to be more attached to these people around them who they see suffering. You're going to see suffering. You're going to see pain. If you go out and you walk the streets, you see a lot of problems going on. You can just look at people and tell there's something wrong happening. The more empathetic somebody is, the harder it's going to be on them to go through life and to see that. So these people are going to look for escapes. They're going to look for alcohol. They're going to look for drugs. They might even get into crime, pestilence, to cope with what's going on, to be able to handle dealing with all this destruction and all this hardship they see around them. And this gets more into the story of Siddhartha Gautama, who is the Buddha. Siddhartha Gautama, is known as the founder of Buddhism, and he created that off of seeing the suffering in the world. So, again, this looks like an accurate description of what somebody is going through if they're following their path. The guy stopped drinking, or the individual stopped drinking. They couldn't cope with their job anymore. They had to drink to cope with the job. Now they're leaving. They're moving on with their life. And, they're having this, so their whole life had to change over this spiritual experience. Their whole life. Old habits and addictions, relationships, family connections, diet, work, and career, everything comes up for review. If it's not an ailment, it will most likely be removed from your life. We can resist this process out of fear, but usually that only makes the changes more painful. This is the beginning of a journey that will take courage, discipline, and support to make it through. Physical, emotional, and energetic symptoms. Some people will experience physical and energetic symptoms at this point. Mine tended to be emotional rather than physical: anxiety, depression, despair. But many people speak of very obvious signs: shaking, visual disturbance, inability to relax, a major rush to energy, a near-death experience. The nervous system is unable to handle the amount of energy that is wanting to move, and this can show up in a myriad of ways. Okay, for some people the experience is slow and steady. For others, it's intense and immediate. The important thing is not to obsess over the symptoms, but find ways discussed below to allow the energy to move by healing the body and opening up the channels of energy. Don't focus on the particular symptoms, but find ways to heal the body and release the blocks. Doctors and the medical establishment don't know what to do, but will either tell you that you are crazy and or prescribe medications that do nothing to address the root cause of the blockages. This is something that a lot of us in the holistic community and the alternative research community are speaking about publicly and privately, that the medical establishment has no real logical basis in dealing with life anymore as it used to. Somebody like myself, I probably would go to an acupuncture practitioner. I would go get acupuncture, and that would help to deal with the blockages and flows. People who want to stop smoking or lose weight, go get acupuncture. Acupuncture is a healthy way to do it. There are alternative doctors involved with medicine who do know about this, who know that medications are being prescribed to people who don't have any real issues. People who are, you go to a doctor and you say, I'm having a Kundalini awakening. They're not taught in medical school or prepared in medical school how to deal with that. So you're going to want to look more to alternative answers. And it's funny because when you go to the doctor and you see the Asclepius or the caduceus or whatever, it's a snake. If you visualize the two serpents, that represents Kundalini. So it's funny, you go to a doctor and you want to tell them about a Kundalini awakening, and they're wearing a little symbol of a Kundalini awakening, but they can't help you with the Kundalini awakening. It's ironic. Courage, willingness, and desperation to try new things. The intensity of these experiences will often be enough to drive people to try new things. People seek changes in diet, seeking out healers, learning or leaving relationships, changing jobs, all done in an attempt to respond to what is happening on the inside. For me, I was shaken up enough to call in sick from work, go for a hike in the middle of the day, and try a form of yoga I had never attempted before. that Kundalini yoga class ended up being the breadcrumb that I followed, which would change my whole life. When what we know isn't working, we tend to become more open to doing our work. And that's a struggle that a lot of people have, is finding time in their life to do these things. A lot of people are passionate about going to yoga classes, and they just don't feel they have the space in their life, or they feel they need more permission to get involved. I mean, you can start off doing yoga with hand mudras. You can teach yourself yoga. You can look up instructions how to do hand mudras, and you can do basic stretches. And then eventually, you can go to a class, or find somebody to do it one-on-one, or go to a martial arts. Yoga, you can get into something simple like martial arts. That would be, just as healthy, just as practical. Miracles and synchronicities appear, and you receive support from unexpected places. Once we are desperate enough to be willing to try new things, we become available to receive support and miracles from unexpected sources. For me, it started with that first Kundalini yoga class. Soon, I had the courage to request to work part-time, giving myself more downtime to heal my nervous system, allowed me to get in touch with what was truly going on underneath my anxiety, stress, and despair. Within months of practicing this form of yoga, I saw very clearly that my marriage was ending, and I had the courage to let it go. Gurmukh, a Kundalini yoga teacher, came to my town to offer a workshop, and I was given a 40-day meditation, which gave me the daily support to accomplish these changes. We met the right people and attend the right workshop, stumble across the right book, find the right yoga studio, whatever people end up showing at the right time, the right way. Okay, that's an interesting article. So this individual went to a yoga class. See, and everything falls into place. Everything started falling into place for him. And it just goes on and on and on. This is just a quick article. I'm not going to read the whole thing through, but it's from it's an article from Gaia on Kundalini energy. And I'm big into the chakra system, and Kundalini and chakra go hand in hand, as well as chi, ki, and prana. And one of my main interests is the super consciousness, which is the crown chakra. And so, this is a very interesting article to look at. You should read, if you're interested in Kundalini energy, you should read articles like this periodically, at least once a week. For me, it might be once a day, or twice a day, or once every month, or depending on where I'm at in my life. But it's good you can go online. There's a lot of reading material on Kundalini energy available on the web, and it's good to speak to somebody who has experience interpreting this information. For me myself, it wasn't until I spoke to like 20 different people privately about Kundalini energy that I really started to grasp what was being said. I had to go through private conversations. I had to go through social interviews with people, different sorts of things, dealing with the people to get what Kundalini energy was, or to get, what the whole spiritual essence of a soul being was. Kundalini is just more of a metaphor for the etheric body. But okay, there it is.